And a hearty welcome to all our crypto friends. I'm Rekha Khan, your webinar host, and I'll be extending a warm regards to all of you and our guest for today, Mr. Deepak Ghadge, a professional in blockchain. Today, we're going to be talking about blockchain role in environment. On joining, you would have noticed that you all are in mute. Please post any questions you would have in your mind in the chat box during the webinar. The webinar will be concluded by a Q&A session where all the questions of the participants would be addressed by Mr. Deepak. From the creator of Odin, MCX and IEX, here is yet another credible and exchange-neutral platform a user can rely on while walking towards the path of crypto and blockchain understanding. Starting from education to knowledge to all the latest news, all covered under one super app 3.0 verse. From a novice to a professional trader, every market participant can have a slice of information readily available on the touch of their fingers. Let me walk you through 3.0 University, 3.0 TV, and 3.0 Wire services, which are the three pillars of 3 verse. We are all aware that the crypto and blockchain ecosystem is expanding at a rapid speed. To keep up with the events, prices, and news looks to be difficult. However, we have our companion 3.0 verse, which could help you through this phase. Let's start with the homepage of the app, which covers all the three pillars, 3.0 University, 3.0 TV, and 3.0 Wire. Under the 3.0 Wire services, we've rolled out India's first global index of crypto, IC15. It tracks the performance of the top 15 cryptocurrencies based on market capitalization. Crypto enthusiasts and crypto traders can take informed decisions based on IC15. Under the Wirewatch section, you can monitor the best exchange to buy and the best exchange to sell a particular cryptocurrency. In the center of the screen, we can monitor the arbitrage opportunity available between the two exchanges for the same cryptocurrency. There are more than 1,000 plus cryptocurrencies listed in our platform, along with 70 plus crypto exchanges worldwide. Coming to 3.0 TV, it's an exclusive 24/7 IPTV covering everything on crypto and blockchain ecosystem. It is currently available in 4 different languages: English, Hindi, Gujarati, and Marathi. Talking about 3.0 University being the world's first digital university to offer courses on crypto and blockchain, you can find the best courses available offered by our platform. With this, I'm happy to introduce our guest, Mr. Deepak.
Thanks, Rekha.
Hi, sir. I would like to give a short introduction of Mr. Deepak. Mr. Deepak is a blockchain evangelist, a certified blockchain professional. He has been in the space for more than 2 years and managed projects in digital credentials, traceability, retail, and NFT marketplace. He is also specialized in tokenomics to guide clients on white paper and utilization of tokens. He is an eminent speaker, moderator, and panelist in various blockchain forums and covers vast range of use cases. He is also an author and entrepreneur and writes columns in Financial Express. He has managed senior roles in corporates in banking, insurance, IT, and ITES sectors and has good experience in the startup ecosystem. He is also part of a team which created Guinness record. Wow. He is a memorable athlete and visual storyteller. Join me in welcoming Mr. Deepak. Hi, Deepak.
Hi, Rekha. Thanks for that introduction. Hope
Absolutely.
my voice
My
is
pleasure,
audible.
sir.
First of all, thank you to 3.0 for giving me this platform for talking on a new topic, which is very, very important in today's world. And especially when we are talking about environment, probably most of you must have already felt the heat. The summer is not yet started. So basically, the climate change, the global warming is the impact of this. And last week, a couple of days back, Mumbai had the highest temperature in India, which was 39.5 degrees, which is a very odd time of the year because even the summer has not fully started. the temperature was 6 degrees more than the average temperature normally. So which means we were sitting on a hot bed at a very early time, early summer actually. So
Right.
today's topic is related to environment, how blockchain is going to resolve the environment. Blockchain will not resolve the natural process. Blockchain will resolve some of the technical part of the emission tracking and how to reduce emission, how to control emissions. I'll take you through this. I'll just share my screen. And if you
Yes.
have any questions, please do drop in the chat box. We will take those questions. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, basically today's topic is blockchain for environment. And considering we're talking about environment, I've also kept the background green so that we all should be, after we finish this webinar, we also should think about environment around us and see how we can do our part in saving the environment. So, what we are going to go through this webinar today is basic introduction. What is blockchain, the emergence of blockchain, and then what are the security features, why blockchain is used, which is basically the hash function and the cryptography, and then and I will do a small demo of how hash function works, how blockchains data in a blockchain is protected, why blockchain is secure. And after that, I will take you to the real process of environment, why it is important today, and what are the basic calculations of carbon emission, how do we calculate this, and ways to reduce, and how blockchain can solve the problem of environment. Measures currently taken by the governments to tackle carbon emissions, and what are the current projects which are running on blockchain for reducing carbon emission and carbon credits, and how it is going to impact your business, those who are attending as entrepreneurs or who are participating on behalf of your business. This is very important to understand why carbon emissions, reducing carbon emissions is very important, especially for an exporter. So let's begin. So basically, the major trends which led to blockchain was basically that we had the software industry, which started with the software like Foxflow standalone softwares, which we used to use. And then we moved to collaborative developed software to an open source software. Today, where most of us are using open source software. This has reduced enormous cost of licensing, and because people can go on the go and build their products using open source software. One of the biggest finds today is OpenAI and ChatGPT, which is one of the outcomes of open source technology, right? Then we had hardware where we used to have physical servers in most of your schools, colleges, offices, even computer training institutes. Everybody had a physical server to store data. And that moved from physical storage to cloud storage. And today, most of the enterprises are managing their data on cloud. And even financial institutes, governments are, depending on the use cases, they are moving to cloud storage. In cases where the data has to still remain in the premises, only there you can see the physical infrastructure which is installed. Otherwise, most of the world is moving towards cloud. And we also have moving from centralized data control to decentralized. And from there, we are moved to distributed environment. So what happens in the centralized network, basically why it is so risky is the hub and spoke model. If you look at, everything is controlled at the center, and anything happens, anybody hacks at this database. All these spokes which are depending on the centralized server. centralized network, they will get disconnected. So basically, that is the biggest pitfall of the centralized data storages, and they are prone to single point of failure. And data recovery time is very long, and it is high security risk. From then, the world to a large extent has moved to decentralized network. Again, you have multiple hubs and spokes, but any one of those hubs get hacked, or if there is a loss of data, and the spokes which are connected to this hub, they have to wait for a lot of time to recover the data, and they are still prone to security risk and privacy risks. And there is inconsistent performance as well. And because of these two challenges, people move to distributed network, which has higher fault tolerance and it is scalable faster. And each of the nodes are connected to the other nodes. So whatever white dots you are seeing, these are the main nodes, and the blue nodes dots are the nodes which are connecting to each other. So in a distributed network, even if one of the nodes get hacked, what happens is you can copy the data from this node to replicate it with this node and continue with your business as usual. So you don't have to worry about losing data and worry about the transaction speed. And it is scalable faster, and the maintenance, while the maintenance might be high, but there is a lot of security which is taken care. And that is why blockchain as a distributed ledger has become famous. And that is why today people are moving from centralized networks to distributed networks, purely because of one reason is to avoid single point of failure. So if there is any single point of failure instance in your entity, in your enterprise, that will lead to hacks and phishing attacks, and anything can be done. If it's a distributed network, you are securing your data, you are securing your client data, and you are securing your business as well. So that is the biggest takeaway from the distributed network. Now, coming to what is blockchain. Blockchain is a shared, trusted public ledger of transactions. It's kind of a ledger which has continuous list of transactions, which everyone can inspect, but which no single user controls. In a centralized database, there is an admin, there is a controller, so they can always check and edit and make corrections. So it is a distributed database that maintains continuously growing list of transactions, data records, cryptographically secured, and from tampering or revision. So we will come to this definition of cryptography, why you cannot uh, edit or tamper data when you secure the data in a cryptographic by using cryptography. So blockchain is also referred to as distributed ledger technology. So most of the time it is referred as distributed ledger or DLT. If you have heard distributed ledger or DLTs, it is also referring to blockchain. And in some use cases, they use the distributed ledger. In some use cases, they use blockchain technology. So basically, both are doing the same thing because they are using distributed ledger technology, and they're securing. There is no single point of failure, and their data is cryptographically secure, and there is a hash for each of the data. The simplest way to explain a blockchain is that it's one big ledger in the cloud. So whatever ledger you can imagine now, it's a single list of transactions which is ever growing, and that entire list is sitting on the cloud, and which is secure. So if you look at the right side of the slide, so it basically says blockchain is a data storage, it's a transaction log, cryptography and digital signatures, and replicated across distributed real-time consensus, and it is a decentralized system and irrevocable, and been uploaded on the blockchain. And there is an audit trail for every transaction which is happening when the block is entering into the blockchain. So emergence of blockchain did not get invented all of a sudden. In the 90s, the concept of distributed computing was there. And since it's been there, uh, 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 what happened actually from the 90s is during 2000s, Satoshi Nakamoto wrote a white paper on blockchain in 2000 after the Lehman debacle. And then he created the first decentralized ledger network, which gave birth to the rise of Bitcoin, the first cryptocurrency which was created using the Bitcoin blockchain. So post that, the deployment of cryptocurrency in application related to cash. So the cryptocurrency which got generated using Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin itself, was used as a medium of exchange instead of a fiat currency. A cryptocurrency was used as a medium of transaction or a medium of exchange. The famous case was 10,000 bitcoins was used to purchase a pizza as a first order on blockchain. Today, 10,000 bitcoins, I think the current price of Bitcoin is 22,000 US dollars. So you can multiply 10,000 bitcoins to today's price in 22,000 per bitcoin. So that was the value of 10,000 bitcoins today when you compare to the 2010 transaction. And then currency transfers and digital payments started happening, and Bitcoin probably also reached to $1 billion market during this period. And the financial market application using blockchain beyond cash transactions started. And here is where the invention of smart contracts started with the Ethereum blockchain, Ethereum team setting up the new blockchain, which overcame all the challenges from the Bitcoin blockchain. So Bitcoin blockchain had a couple of limitations. Vitalik Buterin wrote the white paper on Ethereum, and they started Ethereum blockchain, and which overcame all the limitations of Bitcoin. And they introduced smart contract. Now, smart contract is a game changer, which today blockchain is thriving because of this one evolution, because the tokens were introduced here, and because of using those tokens today, we are able to digitize any of these assets, physical asset or digital asset, and then it can be now treated as fungible token or a non-fungible token. It can be traded across borders, and it can be used as governance tokens, brand tokens, utility tokens, or voting tokens as well. And this was one of the greatest inventions by Ethereum team. And then here is where the multiple applications of Ethereum came in, where they came up with the dApps, the DeFi, the NFTs itself, and also the DAO ecosystem evolved. And they also came up with the permission blockchain solutions here in 2015-16. Prior to that, all these were public blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoins. These are all, any cryptocurrency for that matter is a public blockchain. And permission blockchain network solutions are for consortiums, governments, federations, federal governments to use the blockchain in a closed network amongst the known participants. So this is where the permission blockchain was introduced, and market evolution and sub-development of other projects and other applications has continued. And ever since this evolution, we have been seeing a whole lot of innovation in blockchain, which is currently happening. Now, what is a block in a blockchain? A block in a blockchain network is like a link in a chain. The blocks are stored records which are valid transactions, like a page of record book, and are hashed and encrypted into a hash tree or a notable tree. The blocks are like the building blocks of any blockchain, and they are distinguished from one another as their different characteristics. When a block is completed, it makes room for the following block in the blockchain. A block is very secure, and it is impossible to hack virtually. So there are three different types of blocks. The first block in a blockchain, whenever creating the first block, uh, so the first block is called the genesis block, and any subsequent block which gets validated through consensus mechanism, that becomes a valid block. And some of the blocks which do not get through the consensus mechanism, where the miners do not accept or allow the block to be entering the blockchain, though these blocks remain as an orphan block. So in this diagram, you can see this first, the first block, this is the genesis block, and these are some of the validated blocks which have been validated by the miners, and these two are the orphan blocks, and these are subsequent blocks which are being mined and allowed in the blockchain ecosystem. So this is how each block is connected to one another, and these building blocks forms a chain, and that is why we are calling that as a blockchain. We will see demos so that the understanding becomes very clear to all the people who are attending. I've kept the demo purposefully because that is where the entire presentation is based on. If you understand how blockchain works, then you can understand every use case around blockchain. Now, let's look at how blockchain is different from a database. So database is a data structure for storing records. It's an organized collection of data to store new data and access existing data. Database administrator can modify the data and store in the database. So always a database has an admin and a super admin. These people have access to edit the database. And it is centralized and keeps data up to date at a particular point. In case database failures, the user cannot access the database, and it's less costly, and data access time and times can become slower. So in a versus a blockchain is it's a growing list of records linked using a cryptograph. Each block contains a cryptographic hash of a previous block, and it's a timestamp and transaction data. Timestamping, whenever a block is completed, whenever data is entered to the block and sealed. So it captures the actual time and hour, date, time, and microseconds, milliseconds, when this block was attached or created. Nobody can edit or modify that time. Modification is not permissible. It is decentralized and eliminates modification of data by other parties. Keeps data to present and past. And in the database, sometimes the regulators do not want the data for a longer period of more than 10 years, 20 years. So you can always delete the data, and or you can keep it copy and keep it somewhere else. Whereas in blockchain, once it is created, you cannot do anything with it. It is going to be there for lifetime on the chain. And it is expensive, and data access time in case of multiple users is less distributed in a database. Cryptography is the binding technology how the data is secured. So cryptography is associated with the process of converting an ordinary plain text into an unintelligible text, vice versa. It is a method of storing and transmitting data in a particular form, so that only those for whom it is intended can read or process it. So any data which is transmitting or through cryptographic process, only the person whom it is intended to review, view, or see, they can only see the actual data. Otherwise, it is sent in a form where it is not readable. Cryptography not only protects data from theft or alteration, but also used for user authentication. The message is encrypted and decrypted. So this is the whole process. The security around cryptography is it is encrypted while sending and decrypted while it is received and read. There are four major problems that cryptography solves. It is confidentiality. Confidentiality, integrity, and proof. Non-reputation means that is Deepak has sent this email or a data. It creates the proof of that record so that you can believe that it's a original record. It is not a created record or a falsified record, and it gives authentication of creation of that record. Now, there are types of cryptography where it is symmetric. When the data is sent through encryption and decryption, you use the same key. And when it is asymmetric, you use the public key and private key. No key. Now, blockchain uses both hash function and asymmetric key. So those who have created wallets, those who have got used to blockchain, all of you would have seen, whether it's a MetaMask or Trust wallet, you would have always seen that you have received a private key and a public key. As long as you don't expose or share your private key, your wallet is secure. And the moment you hand over or lose your private key to somebody else, once somebody else takes control of your wallet, there is nothing which you can do. So that is why cryptography, asymmetric cryptography is one of the key methods of process in a blockchain transaction. And it is always important for anybody who is currently owning a wallet to have their private keys secured. Hash function is another method of cryptography where there is no key used in this algorithm. It's a fixed length hash value that is computed as per a plain text, that it makes it impossible for the contents of the plain text to be recovered. Hash functions are also used by many operating systems to encrypt passwords. Most popular hash function is a SHA-256 and SHA-512. SHA means secure hash algorithm. This is an algorithm which we are using to create the hash function. When you choose one of these, the output will be into 56 bits or 512 bits. For example, how an hash function works is, so I have typed this text saying this is an example of hash value. For this text, this is the hash value. This is the fixed length. When we talk about the fixed length of a hash value, the length of the hash will not change no matter what is the length of the text. The entire textbook can be written, the length of the hash will be same. Now, I just made a small change here. Instead of having small e, I just created a capital E. For example, if you can see this, it gave me a different hash value. So any modification I do, it will give me a new hash. It will not give me the old hash. That is why cryptography and hash value are the two main pillars of blockchain in terms of security. It does not mean that you put this hash value, you will get the same text. It is one direction. You put this text, you will get a hash value. That's it. You put the hash value, you will not get the same text. So that is not possible. And that is another reason why blockchains are secure. Now, I will pause for a moment and I will just show you the demo of how a hash function works, how a block works, how blockchain networks, peer-to-peer networks look like, and then we will come back to the presentation. Can you see my screen, Resma?
Yes, I can see. Yeah.
So let's see how a hash works. So this is a database, a data field. Now for this empty data, you can see there is a hash function which is already been created. The moment I enter something, the entire hash, a new hash function appears. And for this data, where the data has capital D, this is the hash function. So E632B709 is something which we created. If I say an empty database, it gives me the old hash function. If I type the same thing, T, so every time I type T, it will give me the same hash function. So this is the beauty of the hash function. And how does a block look in a blockchain now? Yeah. So this is a block architecture, if we can call that as an architecture. Now, the first block will have the Genesis block will have the block number. The nonce is the number which the miners are trying to solve. And if you look at the data here for this empty data, this is the hash function. And here they can also set the difficulty of the cracking the nonce value. So the number of every time when you set the difficulty to this 4 zeros, every time when it is mined, the first 4 letters should have zeros. So let me try modifying this block with the same thing. So once I modify the existing data, the block turns into red. So now if I have to approve this block, then I have to mine this block. And after mining, if it is validated and approved, and I get a new nonce function, I get a new hash value again with the same level of difficulty with the 4 zeros, and I still have the fixed length of characters in the hash function. This is a block. Now, when I come to a blockchain, so each block is now, you can see there are multiple blocks here. So there are 3 to 5 blocks here. I think there are 5 blocks. So you can see each block has a block number, each block has a nonce, each block has a data, each block has an hash function. So this is the first block. This is the Genesis block, and Genesis block does not have a previous hash, and it has a hash value for this current data. And this hash is the previous hash for the next block. So if you look at the second block, the previous hash is the hash address of the first block. And for this block, there's a new hash, and this hash becomes the previous hash of the previous block, hash of the previous block. Now, if I try to modify this, so if I try to modify this, any one of these blocks, you can see the moment I modified a block, all the subsequent blocks in this blockchain got changed to red color, which means someone is tampering this data. So any block which I am tampering, let's say I try to tamper the fourth block, and you can see all the blocks which are previous blocks, they remain same. They are not tampered. They remain same. There is no change. Any block ahead of this block, wherever I have changed the data, all the blocks needs to be mined. And that is where it is challenging for anybody to enter a blockchain, create a malicious block, and then correct so many blocks ahead of that block. And that is why they use the 51% consensus mechanism, which is going to take a lot of time for anybody to even hack it and create a malicious block and then try to disturb the ecosystem. So if I have to even add this for, if it's a genuine block, if I have done something, I will still have to mine it, and it has to be approved. And then I have to go back, because once I create this block, mine this block, the hash of this block is already changed. Then I have to mine this block as well, so that the hash of this block will also change. So this is how blockchains are connected with the previous hashes. And when we say it is distributed, now there is a peer node, a peer, let's say Rekha is a peer, and then I am a peer B, and somebody is a participant, project committee, she is peer C, and there are multiple peers. Now you can see peer 1, peer A has the same blocks of 1 to 5, and peer 2 also has the same blocks of 1 to 5, and the blocks have the same hash values. And it's the same data. It's the same data what peer A has and peer B has and peer C has. There is no difference in the data which each one of them have. And that is why it is called distributed. And any of these blocks, if I try to tamper, let's say if I have to tamper, let's say block C wants to tamper one of these blocks. So only that block, that node is getting highlighted. The other two nodes are retaining the original database. So they have not changed. Only then if this is getting minted, and then subsequently all these blocks will have to be minted by the miners or the peers to accept this block as a correct block. Otherwise, what happens is if I even mine this, what will happen is this block, fourth block, and this fourth block are going to be very different in terms of the hash value. And this is where it will not be accepted by the other peers, because the hash values are not the same for this block and this block. You can see this hash value and this hash value is very different. So this block, even if somebody is trying to mine it and create a block into the blockchain, they will not be able to successfully enter or modify the data in the blockchain. So this is an example for all of us to understand how blockchain works and why it is secure, how cryptography works, and how hash function works. I will go back to the, the presentation. Now, what are the key features of a blockchain? So we already have seen it's a transaction verification, it's a transfer of value between peers, it is immutable. It is immutable, nobody can change the data, it is secure. We have seen cryptography and hash function. We've seen smart contracts and the evolution. Smart contracts are software codes, it is not a legal contract. The word contract sometimes confuses people of a smart contract. Basically, smart contracts are used for certain conditions if it is met during the transaction. The immediate action is taken through the system itself, and the next action is processed. And this makes it secure for any business to business transaction. Let's say there is an invoice which is being raised for a certain performance, and the vendor has submitted the invoice, and through the verification process, the invoice has been approved through all the layers. In a typical real world scenario, the vendor has to call, chase, and ask even after the due date, 40 days, 30 days, 45 days, or 120 days, whatever payment terms they have, they still have to prove and chase for the payment. So in a smart contract, once the transaction is approved, the vendor does not have to follow. The amount directly gets credited into his bank account. And distributed consensus, we saw how this works peer-to-peer network. We saw peer ABC, how they can see the same data in a transaction, right? Now, benefits of a blockchain, it is cryptographically secure, it's a permanent record, and it is tamper-proof, it is trustworthy, it is faster in transaction, it reduces transaction cost, it is transparent. Like all the peers could see the data, so that is why you can always see the records as transparent records, and there is no central authority, nobody was controlling the blockchain, and there is no single point of failure. So these are some of the benefits and key features of blockchain. This covers the basics of blockchain. Before we enter the main topic, I thought this was very essential for all participants to understand and see how blockchain works and what are the underlying technologies, why it is said it is secure, why there is no single point of failure. So I just wanted to pause for a while. All of you just think through, we have seen this kind of emissions, this kind of pollution happening around, how much pollution we are creating, and we have already disrupted the environment. The global warming is happening. The rise in temperature is already creating a lot of disasters, floods, and the ice is melting. So there are so many other problems, environmental problems, which is today become one of the hot topics. The Davos session, which happens every year, is only because of people, all the global leaders want to take an approach to save the environment and reduce the carbon emission. Now, why environment all of a sudden has become so important today? Ever since the increasing industrial development, industrial agriculture post the World War, the technology advancement has divided the world into three categories: developed countries, developing, and poor nations. Developed countries have disturbed the climatic imbalance and created wealth for themselves. They have done a lot of mining, they have done a lot of technology innovations, they have done disrupted the environment, they have polluted the environment, but they have also become rich. Now, in pursuit of that, developing countries, or probably some of the colonial countries, Commonwealth countries, followed their colonial players, and they wanted to also become better in terms of living, per capita income, infrastructure, and they also have a lot of deforestation for industrial evolution. And tilling of soil, topsoil erosion is today a bigger concern. World has today only 60% of there is only topsoil available for 60 years. To create a topsoil layer, it takes 100 years. So we are already at a deficit of minus 40 years. And that is why it has become even more important to have alternate ways of agriculture, and also to see how we can increase the topsoil uh, availability of topsoil across the planet, and increasing and disturbing nature's balance. Extinct of some rare species and extinction of some rare species plants are contributing to climate changes. Growing demand of burning fossil fuels like coal, we have been using this for energy, oil and for transportation and energy levels, and natural gas, which was formed from millions of years due to decomposition of plants and animals. Today we have been generating energy using oil and natural gases. Even these resources are getting depleted, and it is very important for us to look at alternate sources of energy. So what are basically greenhouse gas emissions, which has caused this imbalance in the atmosphere or the environment? Greenhouse gases are in the Earth's atmosphere that trap heat from the sun, leading to the rising temperatures. So basically, all these gaseous emissions which are happening, like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, so they are trapping the heat within the planet, and it is not allowing to pass through the into the solar system, and because of which there is a rise in temperature, and that is why we are seeing global warming which is happening. So because of this, the Earth's temperature started increasing by zero point zero 0.08 degrees since 1880s, and there has been considerable increase in Earth's temperature by 0.32 degrees from 1980s. So in the 4 decades, we have already increased almost 1.5% of the average temperature which was there in 1980. So that is why every country today is going through a heat wave or a global warming kind of an issue. That net effect is probably, it shows 1.2 or 1.5 degrees, but at times it is more than that. That's what we saw in Bombay last week. We had a 6 degree rise in temperature all of a sudden, and that creates a lot of changes in the environment. Carbon 2 emissions have increased post-industrial revolution. Methane released increased due to cattle farming, landfills, waste dumps, rice farming, production of oil and gas. Nitrate oxide produced a large scale of fertilizers. So this is where farming community is also emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. Man-made greenhouse gas emissions are hydrofluorocarbons, which we use in refrigerators and ACs. The more ACs you are using, the more you are contributing to the polluting the environment. The fluorocarbons, sulfur oxides are some of the man-made greenhouse gas emissions. Some of them which have more than 23 times of it can potentially pollute, create havoc more than 23 times than the natural carbon dioxide itself. I will show another important slide here. Yes, all of us should see this. So I have added some of these countries. So from 1750s, you can see how carbon emissions have evolved, and which are the countries which have contributed to this. So till 1800s, you can see there was hardly anything, and then when the Industrial Revolution started, US, UK, and Canada started environmental imbalance, and then US started taking over the Industrial Revolution in the 1880s, and then the colonial, as a colonial colony, India also started contributing. And after independence, you can see the emergence of China, which is one of the largest polluter today, and how they have been contributing to the increasing effect of global warming. And today, China, United States, and India are standing as top 3 polluters of environment. India is at 7%. I think US is around 15-20%, and China is almost 30%. So this is the amount of pollution which has been created by these countries, and they have a huge challenge in reducing the carbon emission. So I thought most of us should understand how things are looking, going through globally in terms of polluting the environment. Now let's look at now, this is a basic calculation. If I am a household, how much of carbon emissions I'm doing. So I calculated the units of conversion if I'm using electricity, LPG, petrol, diesel, water. So how much is what is my emission factors? And in a year, if I'm using electricity, this is my actual consumption. So if I'm using this much, so this is the output in terms of carbon input in terms of my consumption in a year. My total consumption of carbon dioxide was 82,573. So if I convert that into ton, it is carbon emissions are measured in per ton. So if we convert in ton, so it comes to 82.5 tons of carbon is what I'm emitting in a year. To balance this, what should I do? If I have to balance this, 1 ton of carbon, I need to plant 35 trees. If I have to balance 82 tons of carbon, I have to probably plant 3,000 trees. So this is the amount of effort which each one of us have to take to save the environment. And just planting trees is not going to solve the problem. There are alternate ways where we can solve. We will go through that before we get into how blockchain can help there. So what is carbon footprint? Carbon footprint basically is defined as the total amount of greenhouse produced directly or indirectly to support human activities, usually expressed in tons of carbon dioxide. So if you looked at the previous example, I converted everything into ton of carbon dioxide, and this is how we are emitting. We are using electricity, we are using transport, we are using fuel, gas, and we are trying to offset by planting trees, recycle. All these are offset with waste management. This is a carbon footprint. A carbon offsetting is a reduction or removal of emission of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases made in order to compensate for emissions made elsewhere. So you might emit in an industrial area, but then you are putting plants or growing trees in another place or in another country to balance it out. So that is how we are talking about carbon offsetting. Ways to reduce carbon emissions is basically use efficient energy management. So probably if you've seen most of the industries, software companies today are using LED lights or sensor lights where only someone is present, the lights are on, otherwise it gets switched off. Switching of fuels and use of renewable energy, efficient management of recycling materials, make your driving efficient, reduce car usage by switching to alternate modes or use co-sharing, plant more and more trees, keep planting, switch to clean energy like solar energy, renewable energy or wind energy, eat less red meat, switch to vegetarian food, make your home energy efficient, use less water wherever you can. So these are some of the alternate ways of reducing carbon emissions. How many trees to offset 1 ton of carbon? So I already said if you have to reduce 1 ton of carbon, you need to plant around 35 trees. The standard is like 31 to 46 trees you need to plant to reduce 1 ton of carbon. And today, I think up to 2022, those calculated that 31 gigatons of carbon has been already emitted. So to offset that, so you probably have to plant 1,300 billion trees, which is like 200 trees per person on the planet. So this is the amount of effort which you need to talk about. Planting so many trees is not possible at once, and this eventually will increase the needs to be done faster at a faster rate, and we'll have to look at alternate means. Now let's come back to the topic: how blockchain can solve this problem. The first use case of reducing carbon emission was done with Ethereum itself. The first change in blockchain ecosystem, which we have seen from Ethereum, they moved from the proof of work consensus mechanism to proof of stake, because proof of work used to take a lot of time and energy. And with proof of stake, which they recently changed in the last 6 months, they are now claiming to reduce the energy emission consumption by 95%, so which means they're reducing a lot of carbon emission by just switching over to by the consensus mechanism. That is why, if you remember, China had banned all the crypto mining work in China, because China was not able to afford to support the energy consumed by the miners. And these miners moved to the US or Mongolia, the neighboring countries of Mongolia, Russia, and they started mining their cryptos in there. Blockchain uses various consensus mechanisms which uses computing power, resulting in higher energy consumption. And that is where it is important to switch to a consensus mechanism which can use lower energy. The role of ESG in corporate world has today become very important. ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. And we are also talking about carbon credits when we speak about the environment. The E is in ESG is related to environment. All companies now have to comply with the ESG compliance process at their governments. One of the key objectives is to here is to reduce the carbon emission. Carbon credit, it permits an organization to produce a certain amount of greenhouse gas emissions depending upon how many credits they want. So one carbon credit is equal to 1 ton of carbon emission. Organization receive a set amount of carbon credit, meaning they can only produce a limited amount of greenhouse emissions. In case if they cannot control that, they will have to buy credits from another organization which has got excess carbon credits. So that is why carbon credits have become very popular, and that's why blockchain use cases on carbon credits have also now emerging and increasing. So how to trace carbon on blockchain? With the help of smart sensors, it helps us to calculate energy consumption and generate data that can be aggregated and analyzed on blockchain. So anything which comes on chain on blockchain, you've already seen it cannot be edited or it cannot be, it is immutable. These carbon emissions are converted into carbon credits, and that an entity can exchange to offset their footprint. Accurate tracing gives opportunity to neutralize carbon emission. Now, the challenge with carbon is an intangible asset. It is not like a tangible asset, like a physical asset. It is a gaseous form. It is very difficult to calculate the actual emissions. So there are ways of emissions which happens, which is direct causes and then indirect causes. When an organization is calculating their carbon emissions, they have to make a list of all the possibilities of direct and all possibilities of indirect carbon emissions, so that they can control by using alternate methods or using environmental friendly methods, and then they can look at when they can become net zero. Smart contracts can help us to calculate, track, record reduction of carbon footprint, real-time authentication and verification of the data, decentralized approach, involvement of all stakeholders helps tackling climate change problems. Timestamping of transaction of carbon emissions helps to prove single source of truth. So whatever we saw in the basics of blockchain, which we covered, we saw timestamping, we saw decentralized, we talked about smart contract, we talked about immutability, transparency, and trust. This is where all the fundamentals are going to be used in tracing carbon in blockchain and also tracing the trading of carbon credits. Benefits of carbon tracking in blockchain is it is transparent in tracking emissions, it is authentic and verifiable and facilitate carbon trading. You have data for analytics, controls overestimation of carbon emissions. How blockchain can solve this problem? Entities that produce more than the limited amount of amounts must purchase extra credits. So we have traceability of which entities are purchasing more credits. entities that produce below the limited amounts, they can sell the remaining credits. So you have both the checks, people who have more credits with them available, people who do not have credits with them, and who's taking what kind of action to reduce the emission is also being tracked, audited, and the data is available. Smart agricultural practices with traceability, tracking, and data immutability will help to solve this problem. Tracking process end-to-end can help build a circular economy where uh, do more from less strategy can be implemented. So you use less water and grow more. You use less fertilizers and grow more. You use alternate means of biofertilizers which can give you more productivity. These are some of the alternate ways where you have to deploy, and you can start recording that on blockchain for verification and traceability. 7 ways how blockchain can solve the problem is environmental treaties, track impact and compliance of environmental treaties, decrease fraud and manipulation. There's a lot of things which have been talked at the treaty level, and many things get manipulated. If those treaties are on smart contract or it is on blockchain, you can actually verify and audit the uh, actions taken by the other parties. So increase energy efficiency by P2P electrical grids. So today people can uh, generate solar energy, wind energy, and they can trade with their peers, neighbors who want to use the clean energy. That is another thing which can be tracked. Recycling issued tokenized rewards for recycling and track efficacy. So governments, local authorities can give tokens to people who are generating alternate sources like solar energy or wind energy, and which can be traded using tokens for other utility purposes for the supply chains. Track products from origins to store to reduce carbon footprint. If somebody is buying meat, somebody is buying an agriculture product, it can go to the origin. Textile today is one of the key industries where there's going to be a lot of sustainability, which has been talked about. Europe is very strict on sustainable production, and most of our exports are into the European market. To, to generate 9 kilos of cotton or uh, the amount of water which is used is 36,000 of liters of water is used to just clean the raw cotton for them to yarn and spin it into a thread for them to use for netting or manufacturing of the textile. So approximately for 1 kg of cotton, they are using 5 to 10 liters of water just for cleaning the process. So that is the amount of water which is also spent, and that is where textile companies are now mandated to use recycling of water because they use chemicals in the process of cleaning, use wastewater mechanism. There's a lot of things which are happening. That is why origin of textiles, which mill this is coming from, what kind of cotton, what kind of chemical natural dyes they are using. The buyers want to make sure this is an organic cotton and organic dye, and that is why it is getting important. Otherwise, the Indian manufacturers will lose this market very soon. Carbon tax is a tax which is levied by the governments on the companies which are emitting carbon emissions. And changing incentives, aligning incentives with sustainable practices, create incentives for people to generate clean energy, use solar energy is something which the government can also look at it. Not non-profits track where the donations are going and reduce inefficiencies and bureaucracies. Some of the times the funding comes and the funds are used for something else rather than for the right purpose. Blockchain can help solve this problem of traceability of utilization of funds as well. Some of the blockchain use cases in the environment which is currently happening across the world. So Earth Fund uses donate cryptocurrencies to fund environmentally friendly projects. Kucon has created a tokenized carbon credits which are backed by real-world carbon offset credits. supply chain, fish coins, traceability to stop illegal and unsustainable fishing practices. Sometimes when the boats are allowed for fishing, they fish more than what is allowed. And through this, you can trace how much each of the boats are limited for fishing, and some of the island countries are more worried about this illegal fishing, because if they fish more than what is allowed, their natural resources around the islands will start depleting. So it will have a huge impact for them. Diatom DAO addresses pollution from plastics, and energy is another project. Use solar energy, solar powered plants to extract carbon dioxide. And Ocean Drop is another project which is running. The proceeds of NFTs are used to offset carbon and protect marine areas of Coco Islands and Costa Rica. All the proceeds which are generated through this Ocean Drop art has been used for protect the islands of Coco and Costa Rica. Crypto Coral Tribe, they are sharing 50% of the revenues, and they're trying to plant 3,000 corals which are getting lost worldwide. Carbon tax across the government, governments have started issuing levying carbon tax. Sun Exchange is one interesting project which is started in South Africa, where solar panel leasing is happening. They come and assess your energy requirement, and then they give you this solar energy at least for 20 years. And each of these panels are lasting for 20 years. And with that, you reduce your energy consumption, and you get clean energy through solar energy, because they are also very close to the equator, and then there's a lot of sun which is available for them. So solar energy becomes a clean and alternate source of energy for them to use instead of energy generated through the power grids. So there is Power Ledger in Australia, which is tracking, giving solutions for traceability and tracking of emissions. There is also Food Tracks, which is looking at carbon emissions through agricultural practices and supply chain. So some of the challenges, there are two types of carbon market. There's a mandatory market and there's a voluntary market. So voluntary market, if some company says we are reducing carbon and all the data is managed by them, it is very difficult to trust that data unless it is on blockchain. So there are unrecognized projects issuing tokens as carbon credits without any quality checks. This can be one of the challenges. The right valuation is still a challenge for the right price, as carbon as an asset is intangible and a bit difficult to measure, because carbon, 1 ton of carbon in every country is, the price is very different. The actual price today, if you look at carbon stocks or some of the carbon credits which are getting traded, in some countries the carbon tax is as high as $140 in Uruguay. In some countries the carbon tax is $20 per ton of carbon emission. So coming to a valuation of an actual price, it depends with a lot of factors, and that's why it becomes very challenging to come to an actual price. And since this is a new area, people will try to make as much as possible, and probably to the perceptive value of carbon tokens, which will see new heights, because the current prices are still not reached to $80 or $100. Carbon credits are still trading below $40 on an average, and there's a huge spike which is available for somebody who wants to invest and make a fortune in this. So measures taken by government and private entities to reduce carbon. India's target to net zero emissions is to achieve this by 2070. India will get its non-fossil energy capacity by 20. Basically, we are saying we are going to use solar energy, renewable and wind energy, and generate 500 gigawatts by 2030, which means our consumption on petrol, diesel, kerosene will reduce because we're going to use alternate energy. India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from renewable energy. India will reduce the total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons onwards till 2030, and India has a target to reach by 2070. And it is just not the government's effort. Each one of us have to educate each one of each other, and we have to do our bit to reduce carbon emissions in our homes, and only then we will be able to save the planet. So that should be our goal as well. How it will impact the business? With growing concerns of climate change, countries across the world are now realizing the impact and harm it can do uh, if it is not controlled. And each country or region is setting up their regulations for reaching the net zero target. Mainly for exporters, they would need to use technology to show traceability raw materials, whether it's organic food, natural dyes, use of fertilizers or pesticides, especially uh, agriculture, agriculture related products and textile, or some of these industries are going to come under the European regulations. If they are exporting to the US or the European regions, they will have to start reducing carbon emissions. And that is where is a huge impact. This is putting pressure on the exporters to manufacture efficiently, and they should show how they are reducing their carbon and how they are offsetting their carbon. Importers, goods which show carbon efficiency and traceability, uh, we should also look at what we are importing from other countries, poor countries. We should also price our standards of accepting any of those imported goods which has higher carbon emission. Adapt to change or change the change will be very expensive for us, and there will be greater loss. Under the cross-border adjustment mechanism, the exporters of to the EU have to meet their standards, and EU has a target to become net zero between 2050 to 2055, which means whatever is entering the European Union, they are going to have stringent norms in terms of carbon emissions. So this is where the exporters will have to be on their toes to make sure they don't lose the market. Instead, if they are proactive, they can increase their market share, becoming environmentally friendly, biodegradable products, and they can create a new market for themselves. Will planting trees alone solve the problem? The answer is like we have said, we will have to do a lot of other ways where we can use other sources of energy, and it is not very easy to meet the targets. And planting trees will help, but also it will take time to grow, maintain. If you even if you plant 100 trees, 10, 15 of them will die. And so you should keep that mortality rate when you're planting trees. You can plant trees for your celebrations, birthdays, marriages, children's birthdays. At least that should be one of the projects which we should start individually. I personally have started planting trees on our family occasions. Use alternate source of energy like which we have already spoken. Be conscious of what you are eating on your lifestyle. Post today, you should take this a bit seriously and educate each person in your circle. Try changes in the family first and then change others. Now that we have come through almost to the end of the session, so you know what is carbon emission. Now take the step and be responsible what you consume and what you buy. Saving the environment is in your hands. Blockchain will not solve the problem, to only act as a catalyst, provided there is an intent to solve the problem, like offsetting the carbon and carbon using carbon credits. If you really want to see the impact of carbon, all of you should watch this Netflix documentary, Kiss of Carbon. It's a mind-boggling documentary on the carbon emission which we have done post-industrial revolution. Now, whatever, if you look at this whole circle as the Earth's ecosystem, I just blocked it because I couldn't get a semicircle like this, so I just blocked it. So you consider anything Earth as above this blue line. So whatever emissions which have already happened, they are going to be trapped within this ecosystem because these gases have not been able to surpass the Earth's ecosystem, and that is why the heat is increasing the temperature. There's a rise in temperature. So with offsetting, we are going to reduce the amount of emissions, but whatever has happened in the past, they will remain. So we use aviation, we use electricity, we use manufacturing and transport, computers and everything. With aviation, I get a very interesting use case. If people are flying British Airways have started another project where you can choose to offset the carbon emission during your flight, where they are planting trees in another country across the world, or they are using another adhesive as as a fuel, additional fuel component which reduces carbon emission. So you can choose what you want them to do. They can with an additional price which you pay for each ticket. Either they will use the additional effluent to save reduce the carbon emission, or they will plant some other trees in another area. So this is another interesting project which is ongoing. And then before that, I will just before I take one session, I'll show one more thing. So this is an article which I wrote on carbon emissions. So people who follow, you can read through this article. This what is carbon emission, why it is important. If you look at it, this graph, so you can see where all the carbon taxes already been implemented. So blue is the carbon tax, green is the ETS, and orange is still, which is consideration. India, if you see, we not even started thinking about it. So that is something which I wanted to show. And this is something where you can see across the world how carbon tax and ETS have been implemented, and see the price of carbon tax in Europe. It is already 140, Switzerland it is 125, 130 Sweden. There's a high carbon tax. Whereas if you compare Ukraine, South Africa, we're still below $20. So carbon credit has a pricing on average $80 to $100 is a good bet in the next couple of years. Yeah, I think I'm done and open for questions. I hope this was interesting. I put in my whatever knowledge I had in these 2 years to meet this use case.
Thank you so much, Deepak. It was definitely an interesting session, and we got to know. Till now, we only knew that there is a lot of pollution and what is a cause. All those things were a bit more clear through your session today. We have got one question, however, till now. The question that we have is why a blockchain needs a token to operate.
See, for traceability or see the token, it depends on the purpose why you are introducing a token. Now, there are different ways of tokenizing utilization. So one, you are creating tokens to motivate people who are already using solar energy. For them to for more people to use solar energy, the government can issue tokens, or the local body can issue tokens, where they can use these tokens to buy something else, or they can get discounts in the neighboring retail, or some of the benefits which can be passed through the tokens. Tokens are a means of motivating people. It's a reward recognition kind of a model where you can use tokens for utility and rewarding people who are contributing for reducing the carbon emission, and they're helping the government in generating clean sources of energy. This is one reason why we need tokens. Other than that, there have been carbon credits which have been created for which you will need a blockchain to trace and to track the pricing. So you will have these ERC tokens. The price will fluctuate depending on the geography and the price of carbon, which I have already explained. So token is one of the means to track and one of the means to reward and recognize this effort.
Got it. Then there is one more question that we have. Can we verify and check if the block is valid?
Yeah. See, the consensus mechanism is for verification. That is why when blockchain blocks are valid, Bitcoin blockchains are valid for consensus mechanism, the first work the miners are doing is validating the block. Since it was consuming a lot of energy, which even today it is consuming, that is why Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake. Consensus mechanism will always be there whether you are on public blockchain or a permission blockchain. If it is a permission blockchain, it is a proof of authority or a proof of audit. Somebody who is sitting as a lead administrator in a permissioned blockchain, they will verify the block and they will allow because they know the participants are known groups. Whereas in a public blockchain, these are participants who anybody can enter the blockchain. You have miners and validators who are validating the block. And this is the process which is going to happen. This is going to exist for ever till the time we have both the blockchains, permission and public blockchains.
Got it. Great. So I think there are no more questions. And thank you so much, Deepak, for taking out time and sharing your views on today's topic. Audience who I have gotten a couple of queries from a few audience in terms of whether they can get a participation certificate. So yes, you can. You will just need to share your details in our mail ID and we can create that for you. And I'm sharing that on the chat box.
People can connect me on LinkedIn. I just posted it on the chat.
Yeah, please do that, sir.
And anybody has a question, they can drop a message. I can answer that.
Absolutely. Please do that. So if anybody has any queries, they can definitely directly get in touch with you.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting topic, first of all, because it has got its own emotion when connected to that. More you understand the problem, I think each one of us will do our bit to save the environment. Because
absolutely, a bit more responsible citizens.
See,
definitely.
Coincidentally, both of us have green background also today. So the message is very clear. So we have a lot of responsibility on our hands.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was great interacting with you. Thank you all audience. It was a pleasure being here with you all. Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.